evening. I'm Mari Kaiman.
I'm Pinky Webb.
And this is News Central. In tonight's headlines, 100 members of the administration coalition jump ship and join FPJ's opposition camp.
President Arroyo, meanwhile, says FPJ would be a pushover when it comes to debating the issues.
Is blood thicker than water? Not so when it comes to Philippine politics.
There's still money to be made even after retirement.
And a 4-year-old prodigy in Iloilo evokes images of the Masters. All these stories and more on News Central tonight. In tonight's top story, at least 100 allies of the administration have jumped ship. Members of the Nationalist People's Coalition, the Liberal Party, and the President's own Lakas CMD Party have now thrown their support behind her chief rival, Fernando Poe Jr. Poe, in turn, promised to reward their loyalty with some of his own. Malacanang, meanwhile, remained unfazed by the defections, claiming their campaign is actually going very well. Rowena Orejana has a full story.
They say this is the first wave of defections from the administration camp to FPJ. KNP officials claim at least 100 congressmen and governors have crossed over to their side. However, most of the defectors posed no surprise. Congressman Jacinto Paras and Harleen Abayon, though from Lakas and the Liberal Party respectively, have always allied themselves with the opposition. What was more of a surprise was Poe's almost 5-minute-long speech, memorized and delivered almost fully in English. What was more significant, though, was the presence of a lot of NPC members, particularly the Marañon brothers, Governor Joseph and Congressman Alfredo, who hail from Negros Occidental, home province of former Ambassador Eduardo Cojuangco Jr.
You know where the wind is blowing.
It is unlikely that the apolitical Cojuangco would make public his support for a candidate. Even the king himself is hesitant in claiming the beer magnate's support.
I haven't spoken with Ambassador Cojuangco for quite some time. More 5 or 6 months.
Reporting for News Central, Rowena Orejana, ABS-CBN News.
The opposition says comedy king Dolphy was merely out to get some laughs when he called the president ignorant. But Malacanang didn't appreciate the joke and instead challenged the opposition to a real battle of wits. The story from Tony Velasquez.
Comedy king Dolphy has from the start always campaigned for Action King Fernando Poe Jr. Up till now, he has always refrained from saying anything negative about FPJ's main rival, President Arroyo. But after allegedly being the target of Malacanang pressure to kick him out of his television show, Dolphy isn't pulling his punches or his punchlines anymore. It was Dolphy's play on a popular Cebuano expression, which in this case translates, she's been in Malacanang for so long, but she's still ignorant. It's a sarcastic dig at President Arroyo's claims that she knew nothing about supposed administration attempts to discredit and disqualify FPJ. But FPJ and his advisors claim Dolphy said what he said merely for laughs and not to attack the president.
Well, pabiro niya yung sinabi yun.
Biro-biroan kung sanglan, totohanan kung tamaan. Kung nasaktan ka, guilty ka.
No one in Malacanang, though, is laughing at Dolphy's supposed joke. The president's campaign spokesman says it's time for the opposition to take the real test to show who's really ignorant or not.
Kung talagang gusto nila malaman kung sinong tonto, humarap sa debate.
But FPJ isn't likely to take up that challenge. The Action King has said he doesn't believe in debates. He won't get into a ring where words have to fly quicker than punches. Reporting for News Central, Tony Velasquez, ABS-CBN News.
Opposition senatorials Butsan Sonroa and Amina Rasul Bernardo submitted another document to the Supreme Court to boost their petition to declare President Arroyo resigned or on leave. In their supplemental motion, the two said the president took 15 million pesos from the budgets of the DPWH and the PCSO to fund her campaign. The two candidates also asked the High Tribunal to issue a TRO on the president's campaign ads while the court is hearing the petition. But the president's camp challenged the senators to also include opposition vice presidential bet Loren Legarda in their petition. Arroyo spokesman Mike Defensor said Legarda could also be accused of using government funds for her campaign for giving out 30,000 PhilHealth cards which bear her picture.
Ngayong January to March of 2004, election year, circa campaign period, this swelled to about 93 million.
No less than Senator Loren Legarda have issued PhilHealth cards of 30,000 to Bicol. Nakasama dito ang muka, ang picture ni Pangulong Gloria Macapagal Arroyo at ng picture ni Senator Loren Legarda.
Meanwhile, barely 2 months before the country's troops to the polls, the national election body warns of a possible election failure. A COMELEC commissioner says they must get the necessary funding as soon as possible or else the nation faces serious chaos. More from Linda Humilia.
In a confidential memo, the COMELEC's executive director reported that except for a few paraphernalia, no election forms and supplies have been turned over to the Packing and Shipping Committee for delivery to the provinces and the diplomatic posts abroad. The report has alarmed Commissioner Resurrection Bora, who has just been designated overall coordinator of the May 10 polls. Bora immediately fired a warning to Chairman Benjamin Abalos and other poll officials. He said unless COMELEC moves fast with its preparations, the country faces a failure of elections. Bora met with poll officials this morning to set drop-dead deadlines for preparations.
If we have to comply faithfully and strictly, the time schedule, which I call the drop-dead deadlines, will be able to prepare fully and adequately for the scheduled election.
Among the election paraphernalia that have yet to be packed and shipped are election forms and the bulk of ballots and ballot boxes. Bora admits the commission's schedule was disrupted when the automated counting project was shelved. This on top of additional work brought about by the overseas absentee voting. Meanwhile, the poll body cut short the employment of more than 100 casual employees who were supposed to render work until after the elections. For the first time in years, COMELEC also failed to give the 4,000 pesos uniform allowance and the so-called CFAG amelioration fund. This has raised suspicion that COMELEC was running out of funds. COMELEC old-timers said delayed preparations and dwindling funds are a double whammy that could result in election failure. Reporting for News Central, Linda Humilia, ABS-CBN News.
Asians are known to value family ties, and the Philippines is no exception. But when it comes to Philippine politics, blood is not always thicker than water. This story from Carlos Valdez.
It's all in the family, they claim, but blood isn't as thick as it used to be, especially when it comes to politics. Though the king of comedy is unequivocal in his support for the king of action, the same cannot be said of his family members. Dolphy Jr. says he owes a lot to brother Eddie Villanueva, whom he credits with altering his life.
Kaya naniniwala ako na kung ginamit siya ng Panginoon para sa pagbabago ko, naniniwala ako na gagamitin siya ng Panginoon para magbago ang ating gobyerno.
Jr. says he had consulted his father about his choices. The king meanwhile said his children were free to choose.
Matalo man si FPJ, siguro mas gusto niya manalo si brother Eddie.
Vice presidential candidate Noli de Castro's past came back to haunt him in a big way. De Castro's ex-wife, Pasita, is throwing her support for Senator Loren Legarda and the rest of the opposition slate.
So I'm asking the all women organization to really support Loren Legarda.
Well, ito'y gawaan ng ating mga kalaban sa politika. Malinaw naman ito, Julius. Pero hindi ko na-expect na hanggang dun sa pamilya ko, sa asawa ko kay Arlene at saka sa anak ko si Manueli, ay isasama nila dito sa ganitong mga black propaganda. Medyo, below the belt yung kanilang ginagawa. But just the same, Julius, ang gagawin na lang namin, siyempre, magpapasa Diyos na lang tayo sa mga ginagawang ito ng ating mga kalaban.
Legarda, meanwhile, has to deal with the fact that some of her in-laws are not too enamored with her.
My family is fully supportive of me. That in-laws Diba? My family is solid. Pero syempre, other families, in-laws, cousins, may kanya-kanyang mga choices yan.
Meanwhile, brother Eddie Villanueva was not worried about his own family, which seems to be gathering in number, at least in terms of showbiz clout.
Hindi kami binabayaran. Because we're doing this for the love of our country and for the love of God.
And just to prove that they could also mount an entertainment extravaganza,
kakainin po natin ang mga buaya na siyang kumakain sa ating lipunan.
Someone once said, family isn't about whose blood you have, but about who you care about. Whoever said that was probably thinking of Philippine politics. Reporting for News Central, Carlos Valdez, ABS-CBN News.
And those were our top stories. For more news updates, you can text news to 2366, while Sun Cellular subscribers can click on them all.
Up next on News Central, a bigger transport strike threatens the metro as oil prices continue to rise.
President Arroyo takes exception to a U.S. terror alert, and the Manila deal will be open to public scrutiny.
And the country protests China's protectionist leanings, while San Miguel Corporation continues to beat the odds.
We'll have more stories for you when News Central returns. Stay with us. Welcome back. The nationwide transport strike pushed through in different parts of the country today, though it was not as successful as its organizers had hoped. But drivers and operators from the group PISTON warned the public to brace for a bigger transport strike tomorrow. More from Cheryl Mundo.
Jeepney Group PISTON is making good its earlier threat of staging a two-day nationwide transport strike starting tomorrow. The transport holiday will kick off midnight to minimize the number of stranded passengers by not bringing them to their destinations in the first place. PISTON's target areas are Cubao, Alabang, Novaliches, and Navotas, among others, in Metro Manila and the provinces of Bulacan, Laguna, and Quezon. PISTON is pushing through with the strike to pressure the government to give in to their request for a 1 peso fare hike. They also belittle the no permit, no rally policy of the Philippine National Police.
Walang batas na pagtitibayin para sagtaan ang individual o grupo na idaing sa isang mapayapang paraan ang kanyang hinaing sa gobyerno.
Provincial jeepney groups launched their own strike in Bulacan earlier, but not everybody joined. However, the group believes they were able to paralyze transportation as classes were suspended in some areas. But while PISTON isn't backing down, two other transport groups, FEDRODAP and Pasang Mazda, have withdrawn their plans to join the strike. In a meeting with DOTC Chief Leandro Mendoza, it was agreed that the current 4 peso fare would cover only 4 kilometers instead of 5. Beyond 4 kilometers, an additional 63 centavos will be charged. The LTFRB will also issue out-of-line permits so that jeepney drivers could avail of the discounted diesel price even if the location of the gasoline station is beyond their route. Reporting for News Central, Cheryl Mundo, ABS-CBN News.
Aside from transport problems, motorists may have to deal with yet another round of oil price hikes next month. Oil companies warn the next fuel price increase could go as high as 1 peso per liter. The details from Alvin El Chico.
Gasoline prices may again increase by 90 centavos to a peso next month. Figures given by Independent Philippine Petroleum Companies Association indicate a $4 increase in the international price of gasoline. From an average of $39.12 in February, a barrel now costs $43.13. Consumer and Oil Price Watch Chair Raul Concepcion confirms there is a basis for another round of oil price hike in April. He urged government to allow a provisional increase for jeepney fares by granting at least half the amount transport groups are asking.
I don't know whether the transport sector will agree. Baka kalahati lang. Whatever they're asking now, it's just 1 peso, 150, ihati mo na lang. With the assurance that on June 1, you'll give them the permanent increase that they're deserving.
But Chito Villavicencio, president of the Independent Oil Players, says diesel is not likely to increase since its price in the world market has barely moved. Sea Oil, meantime, sees pump prices moving only after the Holy Week. Reporting for News Central, Alvin El Chico, ABS-CBN News.
Water distributor Maynilad insists it is not keeping any secrets from the public. Maynilad Legal Counsel attorney Helena Cano says anyone who wants to know the details of the company's agreement with the government can simply ask the court for a copy. But Cano turned down suggestions for an independent audit of the financial projections detailed in the new rehabilitation plan. She says hiring an independent auditor will mean added costs for Maynilad. She adds the court-appointed receiver can do the audit instead. Consumer advocate Raul Concepcion is calling for transparency on the Manila takeover. He says an independent audit and a public hearing should be held on the details of the takeover. Meanwhile, Justice Undersecretary Manuel Tihanqui says as soon as they get the court's go-ahead, they will reveal the details of the new rehab plan.
There will be no duplication of efforts, and we save time and we save on cost.
I don't see a sweetheart deal. Well, because if you look at it, it's a situation, a company is supposedly bankrupt, and so the government takes over.
The only reason the amendment number 2 and documents were submitted to the court under seal was in order to prevent any disrespect to the court.
Malacanang wants an apology from the U.S. Congress for branding the Philippines a haven for terrorists. The president has ordered the Foreign Affairs Department to verify a report that a U.S. Republican survey had accused the Philippines of harboring terrorists. The president called the report unfair since the Philippines has always supported the U.S.-led war on terrorism.
We will protest this and will demand an apology. If anything, the country has been a stalwart in the global fight against terrorism.
Communist guerrillas plan to strengthen their armed ranks as they increase attacks against government forces. In a written statement issued today, the 35th founding anniversary of the New People's Army, rebel spokesman Gregorio Rosal said the NPA will step up attacks against government forces by not less than 5 tactical offensives every week. Rosal said these attacks are aimed at boosting rebel morale as well as to seize arms. He added they plan to recruit thousands of NPA combatants over the coming years. Earlier, the government had said the NPA had stepped up its offensives since the start of the campaign for the May elections.
Meanwhile, opposition party KNP is complaining about a report in the Philippine Daily Inquirer which they claim was all wrong. The Inquirer story claimed that the KNP belittled the support of the religious group Iglesia ni Cristo, citing KNP Media Bureau Chief Rod Reyes as the source. The KNP claims after they issued a clarification, the Daily withdrew the story without any explanation. The damage, however, has been done.
Ni Mr. Reyes yung atensyon ng Philippine Daily Inquirer by making calls dun sa kanilang mga editors saying na hindi yun ang kanyang ibig sabihin.
Any person in his right frame of mind would not issue such a statement, and we did not issue such a statement. And we hope that this will be a closed book and that hindi ito magamit ng ibang kampo para gatungan ang issue, sapagkat ang isyong to ay napaka-importante na baka magamit lang sa anong bagay. Sayang naman po kasi ang suporta po ng Iglesia ni Cristo ay sigurado magbibigay ng landslide victory kay Mr. Fernando po Jr.
Coming up, the U.S. National Security Advisor still refuses to testify before a Senate committee while the UN threatens to leave the Gaza Strip entirely.
And how to make money out of people who've stopped earning money. Nancy Orlando tells us just how to do that.
All these stories and more when News Central returns. Stay tuned. In news overseas, despite a standing Senate request, U.S. National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice refused to appear before the committee investigating the September 11 attacks and allegations from former counterterror chief Richard Clarke. Rice has refused to appear before the independent panel in public and under oath. The commission's Republican chairman said his panel would continue to press for Rice to appear publicly, but would not try to force her to do so under a court order. Clarke, who served under Rice at the White House, has accused President Bush of being determined to go to war against Iraq and of undermining the war on terror by doing so.
Meanwhile, Clarke said that he supports Republican calls to declassify testimony he gave Congress in 2002. Clarke said that the release of the testimony would prove false, and he claims that his earlier testimony contradicts statements in his new book. Clarke also called on the White House to end what he calls vicious personal attacks and character assassination and instead focus on issues.
The United Nations may be compelled to cease several critical operations in Gaza as a result of new movement restrictions imposed by Israel. UN authorities said their staff may stop entering or exiting Gaza through the Erez crossing, the main entry and exit point into and out of Gaza. The UN Refugee Works Agency and the World Food Program could halt the delivery to Gaza of food shipments which more than 700,000 people depend on. In addition, UNICEF could halt a child immunization program and several other child health programs. The UN says the actions are being considered to protest Israel's refusal to allow UN staff who do not have diplomatic passports from passing through the Erez crossing in their vehicles.
Still in Israel, the Supreme Court ruled that Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's son must hand over documents related to an ongoing corruption investigation. Gilad Sharon has refused to hand the documents over. The High Court ruling came a day after Israel's chief prosecutor officially recommended indicting Ariel Sharon for allegedly taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes when he was foreign minister. Both Sharon and his son have denied any wrongdoing.
Taiwan's President Chen Shui-bian is expected to meet with key rival Lien Chan in a bid to resolve increasing tensions following the March 20th presidential election. The meeting comes after the president agreed to a high court sanctioned process to count the ballots again. Chen said he is not afraid of a recount and will accept the results unequivocally.
In the U.S., gas prices have reached a record high. The average price for a gallon of self-serve rose more than 3 1/3 cents during the past 2 weeks to just over $1.77. This according to the Lundberg survey, which canvasses about 7,000 U.S. filling stations. The survey says demand for gasoline remains high despite the record prices and is still expected to go up in the coming months.
Meanwhile, the Philippines supports the U.S. in its move to file a formal complaint before the World Trade Organization against China's protectionist measures. DTI Chief Cesar Purisima claims China's policy disrupts the free trade environment. The U.S. is said to be preparing to lodge a complaint against China's move to impose a 17% tax on imported semiconductors, as well as granting a 14% tax rebate for China-produced semiconductors. In business, shipping firm Negros Navigation is seeking debt relief. The board of Ninaco's mother unit, Metro Pacific, gave the green light to the move to seek a court-approved rehabilitation program. The board said this will provide an equitable and orderly financial restructuring. Ninaco's debts have reached 2.5 billion pesos. Food and beverage conglomerate San Miguel posted a 16% rise in net profit for the first 2 months of the year. SMC says it earned 1 billion pesos in January and February compared to 918 million pesos for the same period in 2002. With this, SMC has completed 80% of its first quarter earnings target. The rise is largely attributed to the 13% spike in the company's domestic beverage business, led by the 30% growth in beer sales. SMC expects profits to remain strong in the next months on increased spending for the elections. Candidates are expected to spend for food and beverages that will be distributed during campaign sorties.
In our business feature, there's a huge difference between the average age of the population in Japan and that in the Philippines. But Trade Secretary Cesar Purisima shares how he can cash in on that. Nancy Orlando reports.
So one of the things that I see as a long-term competitive advantage is our demography.
Secretary Purisima cites the age contrast between the population of rich nations like Japan and the European Union and the Philippines. The Japanese and most Europeans are steadily getting older. In the land of the rising sun, the average age is 60. Most Filipinos are under 25. Purisima tells us about the logical business opportunity that follows that.
One of the things that we've been trying to sell is retirement services. When it's cold in Japan, the older folks would probably want to be here so they can continue to play golf. They need people to service them in their old age. And to think that they have 1/3 of the world's savings, which is $10 trillion. In fact, I keep telling people if we just get 1% of that, that's $100 billion.
The Philippines' foreign debt of close to $60 billion almost seems small compared to that. For this purpose, there is the Philippine Leisure and Retirement Authority, or PLRA. This group is deep into trying to identify areas suitable as retirement havens.
In fact, there are a couple right now. One being put up in Tagaytay. There's one in Cavite. I understand a major Japanese company is looking at Clark.
The Trade Secretary says the country should position itself to take advantage of that, since the Philippines is just 3.5 hours away from Japan.
We need to invest in language, Japanese language skills. We need to understand their standards of care. And we need to make sure that we orient our businessmen towards tying up with Japanese businessmen.
When News Central returns, Chingay Andrada gives us the lowdown on the day's sports action. What will you have for us, Chingay?
Well, Pinky, I have some golfing news, and it's not about Tiger this time, unfortunately. I'll also have the latest on the Dallas-Orlando game and the final forecast for the U.S. NCAA Basketball Championships. All that and other stuff when News Center returns. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Here's Chingay now with the latest in sports. Ching?
Thanks, Mara, and hello to you, Pinky. Tonight's sports news begins in golf, where Adam Scott became the youngest player to win the sport's richest tournament. The 23-year-old Australian closing with a 2-under par 70 to beat hard-charging Patrick Harrington by a shot at the Players' Championship on Sunday. Scott almost blew a 2-shot lead with just 1 hole left to play. He did pull a 6-iron into the water on the final hole, but made a clutch bogey putt to preserve the win. Carding a 66, Harrington settled for second place, that is, for the second year in a row. In the meantime, world number 1 Tiger Woods failing to make a comeback, finishing with a 73 to share 16th. Defending champ Davis Love III with a 73 as well for 33rd. It is Scott's second PGA Tour victory, earning him $1.44 million from the $8 million prize. On to the women now at the Kraft Nabisco Championship in California. Grace Park now with her first major championship title thanks to a pressure-laden birdie putt on the final hole. A one-shot victory for Park over teenage golfer Ari Song. Park closed with a 3-under par 69, finishing at 11 under 277. Now Song did roll in a monster eagle putt from 30 feet to gain a share of the lead, but Park charging back, gently rolling in the winning putt. Pinky Webb closed in with a 69, 2 strokes back to finish in 3rd place. Time now for the NBA. The Dallas Mavericks beating the short-handed Orlando Magic. Score there 118-88 on Sunday. Dirk Nowitzki led the Mavs to 25 points, while rookies Josh Howard and Marquis Daniels combined for 39 points. Orlando currently owns the NBA's worst record with 19 wins and 56 losses. Ouch. They are playing without the injured Tracy McGrady for the 4th time in 5 games. Dallas on a 9-2 run in the first quarter to take command, leading by as much as 20 plus for most of the 4th quarter. In Milwaukee now, the Houston Rockets with a come-from-behind win in OT against the Milwaukee Bucks score their 111-107. The Bucks blowing an 87-78 lead with under 5 minutes left in the game. The Rockets, though, on a 12-2 blast to force the game in OT and taking this game in the end. And scores from the U.S. NCAA men's basketball tournament. The Final Forecast now all set. Jarrett Jack with a career-high 29 points to lift the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to a 79-71 win over the Kansas Jayhawks. That is in overtime, with the Duke Blue Devils ending the Xavier Musketeers' tourney run, scoring this one 66-63. The 3rd-seeded Yellow Jackets who now face 2nd-seed Oklahoma State this coming Saturday, with Duke to play against Connecticut. Well, that ends tonight's sports action. I'll see you again tomorrow, taking you back now to Muddy and Pinky.
Thanks a lot, Chingay. And finally, a 4-year-old holds her first art exhibit while a teen magazine turns 5. Candy Reyes has more.
She may only be 4 years old, but even at such a young age, she's already a celebrated artist. Ia Dueñas is the first child ever to hold an art exhibit in Iloilo. Many were amazed at her talent. Dad says his daughter has been painting like a pro since the age of 2. She learned how to use a paintbrush when she was only 11 months old.
She started about 1.5 months. Binigyan na namin siya ng plan. We gave her paints, these water-based paints.
5-year anniversaries are definitely worth celebrating, and Candy Magazine isn't one to say otherwise. The publication decided to commemorate its birthday with a bang at the Greenbelt Expo Exchange in Makati City.
We've given Candy recently a fresh new look, so the layouts are fresher, brighter, bigger, I think. And we'll continue to do that for as long as the readers keep telling us what they really want to see in the magazine.
Since it first hit the newsstands, Candy has been doing its best to please the young teen market, as it aims to be every girl's best friend.
We're very happy that the readers have trusted us all these years, and they really come to us and tell us their problems, and we listen to them like a true best friend.
Reporting for News Central, Candy Reyes, ABS-CBN News.
And that's it for us this evening. I'm Pinky Webb.
I'm Shinga Andrada. Thank you very much for joining us.
And I'm Marty Keimel. Get your news straight and fast only here on News Central.
Good night.
night.